Hello, Ben.
Hello, how's it going?
Thank God. I was gonna tell you that I'm running a few minutes late, but it worked out. It's some traffic,
Hmm.
but I'm here. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. I am have a few meetings coming up later today, but for now, the day has been pretty chill.
Are you working remotely most of the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I got you. I got you.
most of the week.
Is that difficult?
I guess it could be. I'm used to it now. I've worked this way for the last 4 years,
Mm.
4 years, something like that. And before that, I've been doing a lot. I've been I have been writing a lot, so that includes a lot of working by yourself, like
What do you mean writing?
scripts, most of the stuff that actually got produced, but like just writing either scripts or fiction or stories, things like that. So it
Any of
requires a
them?
lot of remote work, and
Any of
then
them
bringing it
inspired
to
by
people.
inspired by the Torah?
Mhm.
Are any of them inspired by the Torah?
Um, Not too much. With the point that when I was doing them, even though there are a few interesting things when I look back that I kind of added, um, a few like an apple or something with an apple, but yeah. So
My
essentially,
son came to me. He's like, but you're not gonna believe it. I was like, what? He's like, I need to show you something. I was like, okay, what do you need to show me? He's like, look at this book I have. So it's this comic he has of Norse mythology.
uh huh,
He's like, they're saying they have a different Adam v'Chava, and they're saying, I'm like, I know, I know. He's like, but look, this story. I'm like, right, it's very similar. He's like, and they have a tree. I'm like, and they have a tree. He's
yeah.
like, I'm looking for it. I'm looking for the snake. And then he found like, there's the Ragnarok snake. So right
Mm-hmm.
now he's just like, what's happening in my life? And I'm trying,
Yeah.
to explain to him, like, these parallels, these stories that everyone's trying to reach, and everyone's trying to understand this story. So he's very excited.
That's cool. That's nice. He's discovering the world.
Right. I mean, this gets interpreted to, uh, like, do you think the actor Thor would want to know that I'm Jewish? I'm like, yeah, sure, Billy. I'm sure he's very excited. He like wants to give them notes for their next movie. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Anyways, that was so I was just thinking about like it reminded me of the fiction. RJ,
Yeah.
shalom. How are you? I hope all's well. I see you have a new little picture, a little image. You have a chamsa, keeping it a little more traditional now. I see. So,
Mm-hmm.
chamsa,
Yeah.
chamsa, chamsa. All right. Where were we?
That's a good point. I need to do that.
I think either we finished in the stopped in the middle or finished one.
It's a good question. I think we might have stopped in the middle. Let me see. There are a bunch of small ones. Let me put it up here.
The sorry, yeah. Um, the five kinyanim.
We are. Well, let's see if we finished. Rabbi Yossi ben Kasma.
That that what we were talking about Rav Yossi ben Kasmia. What was the story over there?
Yom
He's
echad
part of
paga
the
biyadam.
that's last Pagabi. He was walking, and then like that's the whole crazy sequence of the story, right? Come to my city, there'll be rich people, you'll learn
Mhm.
Torah, right? Right. So he spoke about this whole interesting conversation that they had over here. How he asks for a name, he doesn't give him the name. Why does he assume that there isn't being Torah taught over there? We spoke about how this could potentially be even Rome at the time, because we spoke how Rav Yosef ben Kisma had a good relationship with the authorities. How, in an eerie way, at his funeral, people came, and that's also the way they rounded up the other some of the other heavy hitters in that time, and that's where we have the 10 martyrs story. So there's that recurs as well. What else did we say over here? I want you to live with me. We spoke about how it came and spoke about how well first we explained how this guy's coming with a tremendous amount of money and trying to circumvent the conversation, which is, I'm going to come to the city. You guys won't have enough money to support me. So he's coming. He's like, don't worry about this. Like this all could get paid for. You won't be dependent on, like we mentioned in the past in other occasions, you won't be dependent on the supporters of the Torah. Rather, this already is all being given to you. And right here answers back that I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested. Do you mind scrolling down?
Yep.
Doesn't King David get mentioned there? Yeah, okay. Then he stresses King David because King David himself knew the value of gold and money and coins, and he himself also decided to not participate in that, and he wanted to value, the study of Torah. So there too, he realizes that what's on the top of the hierarchy. We spoke a little about, I believe, of L'Achzir Shalom, that he wasn't first to say hello, and we said that either because he was not expecting this, or it's because we're talking about Elijah potentially, and the language we use over here could be that this is an internal conversation going on, right. On the road, and not necessarily one happening in reality, one happening internally, and we all should be having these questions, so to speak. And Elijah was testing him to see, would he leave for this gold and silver, basically. But in reality, he stands strong, and he's not tempted by this and decides to stay in his land ultimately.
Yeah, and then we have
not his land, the town he lives in. Right. So I think we went through that one, and then we continued with Yud. And do you want to start from the beginning, or do you want to try to locate where we were?
We can try to locate. I don't know if we stopped the VAM. I can try to look quickly.
I mean, we could go back to the old video, but we spoke about these.
Here.
Sorry. Hello, Adam. I hope all is well. Thank you for joining us. We're happy to have you with us. So we have the Chamisha Kinyanim Kanal HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Lamo Ve'eluhen, right? These are the acquisitions that God acquires. We challenged and asked, and by the way, anyone watching, the only reason I'm going through quickly is because we've gone through this, but we'll slow down as we catch up. And at any point, Ben, if you think we got to the place where we caught up, let me know. But right, how does God acquire? How is this possible? Isn't everything his already? First of all, he doesn't have to buy anything. And then we spoke about acquiring is by making something, right? We gave an example of I think I gave an example of a carpenter, but it could be anyone, a sculptor, anyone that's building stuff or making things really gets the sense of the full acquirement of it, right? He's participating in it. And even that's true, we challenge, okay, so that's great. Why are we only talking about 5, right? Because ultimately, even if we're talking about it's an act of creation, God ultimately has created all things, right? So then we focus on how these 5 acquisitions are actually, they're at the foundation of creation. They fulfill the goal of creation that's like, this is their essence. So that's why they're very important. And we spoke about how and again, the Torah is speaking in the language of man, right? It's trying to relate to us. So just like we see value in, we call it the Guggenheim, right? Why is it called the Guggenheim? Because I'm going to name it something because of how important it is. So here too, what are the beloved acquisitions that God has that He's willing to place His name on top of, right? So these are acquisitions that also are, each one stands alone, right? So it doesn't derive any value from the other ones, right? So each one, while they could still be connected, ultimately each one stands alone. So that was just, let's say, the preamble. And then we spoke about the acquisitions, which the land, Abraham, Israel, the temple. And then we gave different verses, which one, and now we'll go through these verses and what they're talking about. I don't know if you have your magic book with you, but obviously
I do.
To chime
in. Magic book is here.
So Torah minayin, where do we have Torah from? Dichtiv, we're told in Proverbs, Hashem kanani reshit darko kedem ifalav me'az. Do you want to read it in English?
Yes, the Torah, as it is written in Proverbs, God acquired me as the beginning of his way before his works of yore.
Right. So we spoke about how, the famous question, what's the purpose? Why was the world created? Yeah, right. What's its destiny? And we spoke about how the observance of the Torah and the fulfillment of its commandments are the destiny that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Through the Jews, there's a certain version of how that gets manifest, and that's true also towards the Gentiles of the world as well. Now we spoke about how the Torah is really the root of with all this wisdom, where all this wisdom starts from, and it really starts when ultimately when everyone recognizes God's sovereignty over the world, right? And this is like the path He's offering us, right? So everything ultimately returns back to the source, and everyone will eventually understand that the foundation of the world exists. And this goes back to the conversation we have many times about being holy, ultimately, right? Which is God is holy. He's inviting us to be holy as well, so we could partake in a proper conversation with Him. Part of being holy is acting in a certain manner, right? Which is we're there to act in a way which exemplifies God's glory and really manifests and shines and stresses God's image in us, which as Jews we believe are the 613 commandments, the Torah, and for the Gentiles we believe that they have, of course, their own Torah, the Noahide Torah, and that's for a different conversation. But that's the point. We're all supposed to go back to this. We're all supposed to go back to the source. And we mentioned in the past how the Torah, in a certain sense, is a blueprint, right, for the world, right, in how God establishes the world. Bara histakel ba'oraita, the bara alma. God looked at the Torah and then created the world, right? So the universe, in a certain way, operates according to these principles, right? And again, these are spiritual principles. This is not to deny the laws of thermodynamics and the constants in the world, but rather this is to talk about their spiritual framing, right? And so the world is initially created in a way that aligns with this purpose, right? And the existence of the world and the observance of the commandments are the natural way how to use the world, right? That's the proper operating system of the world. And when we talk about a sin, right, or missing the mark, that's the point. And if we are being told that the world is operating on an iOS system, right? So you have other religions today which are jailbreaking things or working with Android, and that doesn't mean they don't have reception, and that doesn't mean that they can't see great colors. But ultimately, if you want the full experience of the syncing of your iPhone, iPad with the earpods and the whole, there needs to be that sequence. There needs to be an operating system that allows you to do all those things and work with all those things. And that's why very much, Apple doesn't jailbreak, right? They have their own thing of how their system works. That's not to deny the Androids. It just means we're offering a different experience.
It's an interesting metaphor.
I mean, they chose an apple that was bitten out of, right?
That's true.
Since then, we're trying to come back to perfection. They're saying we're not even there yet, right? And in a certain sense, you could even look deeper. That is the example of the tzimtzum, right? That there's a bite out of it, which means there's always a space where there's missing, and we're always trying to fill up that gap, ultimately. I don't know if Steve Jobs is, going to sign off on my analogy, so, I hope from beyond the grave he accepts what I'm saying, right? So, okay. The next is Shamayim ve'aretz minayin, dichtiv, ko amar Hashem, Hashamayim kis'i ve'aretz hadom raglai. איזה בית אשר תבנו לי ואיזה מקום מנוחתי. ואומר, מה רבו מעשיך השם כולם בחוכמה עשית, מלא הארץ קניינך. And I believe you said that is one of your favorite verses.
Yes.
Okay. So you want to read that in English?
Let's do it. So it is the heavens and the earth, as it is written. So says God, the heavens are my throne and the earth is my footstool. What house then can you build for me? And where is my place of rest? And it says, how many are your works, O God? You have made them all with wisdom. The earth is filled with your acquisition.
Right. Very, very powerful sentence over there. And there's echoes in it also of saying, like, when the prophets are saying, I don't actually need your sacrifices right here too, as far as like the heavens, right? Because anything that could actually engulf or encase God. So obviously, no, right? We can't actually fathom these things, but ultimately, the heavens and the earth, right? From a symbolic point of view and from a philosophical point of view, the Torah needs a framework, right? Because where is this Torah actually being observed, right? Where am I actually manifesting this Torah?
Yeah.
And where can I realize it in the world? And the place is, it happens in the heaven and the earth, right? So this is the entire universe, as we said last time, is the body of the body of is creating the body, and the soul, and it houses the Torah, which is the soul, right? So that's in a certain sense, but like that could only be realized, and this goes back to Adam and Eve, right? When they're eating from the apple, so to speak, right? Or if we are symbolically, if Adam and Eve, if we're talking about like a conceptual period of time, right? Of the development of the subconscious. And during that period, I can't actually, or let's say thinking about, what's the word I'm looking for? Quantum mechanics. Okay. Yeah. So it could be here or it could be here, right? It only happens once I observe it, right? Once I observe it, once there's the observation, then there's the superposition, right? Then it's actually, we're deciding where it actually is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So before eating of the apple, right? These are all options. It's good, it's bad. They mean nothing to me because I can't actually manifest them. So what does it matter? I have nowhere where I could actually actualize this. Once I eat from this apple and I observe it and the superposition has happened, right? This is now a place where I can start playing out this reality, right? So I, in a certain sense, and I think I gave this example last time, the Zohar gives this example of the deer that's pregnant, right? That's nervous to give birth because like it's going to be painful and it can't make a decision, right? It's in that twilight zone, right? It's clearly something new is supposed to emerge, but because the person's not letting it happen, it's neither here or there. The Zohar says comes the snake and bites it, and because it's distracted by the bite, the baby comes out. So here, this is alluding to the snake, right? Which of course also was created by God, and the sense was that forbidden wisdom is, that observation. Doing that requires a choice, and we could look at it as a fall or a sin, but in reality, that's where the game could be played out.
And all that you connected to the heaven and earth.
Well, I'm going off a little off the cuff.
No, it's okay.
But this is coming off from heaven and earth being the place where the conversation is happening, right? So the universe where the Torah can be held is this place. That's why we need to mention the heaven and the earth, right?
So
without them, there's no festival.
Yeah, it gives it the space. It gives it practicality. Just like when you design in a house, you can think abstractly about like you can say these colors are bright or whatever, but you can't say if they're good or bad because it depends on the house, on the position of the sun, on the position of like what you want, what kind of room is it, kind of stuff like that, I imagine.
And this goes again to what we mentioned, I believe, also last time, which is that big tension with the 10 martyrs, right? When God says silence, when they ask, is this the Torah and this its reward, right? Because to them, they're still looking at that place from like, the colors, and they can't gauge. And God says silence because I'm watching the drama unfold. And that's why while we have discussed many times how Gamzu Latova, that God created the evil, that evil itself ultimately has a divine spark in it, these are lofty ideas that we could talk about. On the ground, if you lose someone, you sit Shiva. The Torah is not interested in you for at least for 7 days. The Torah is telling you it's very nice that you conceptualize this, and it's very nice that I'm telling you mourn, and I'm telling you don't keep commandments right now. You're supposed to be mourning. So we are humans at the end of the day, and the experience we have is a human experience. Right. So we were talking about the heavens, and of course, from just looking at this symbolically, the heavens obviously represent like, the higher, more spiritual realms, and the earth are talking about the actions that are happening on the ground. Right. So and as we know, we can't actually fit God inside even the temple. Right. And there's different levels of interpretation of what that means. But for all intents and purposes, purposes, God cannot be confounded into the temple. That's why the heavens are more vast symbolically. So that would be, if I'm thinking about a vessel, that's sort of where it's coming from, right? And if I want to talk about the more earthly things, then I'm going to talk about the step stool, right? The throne would be happening in the heavenly, the step stool, which also I don't fully see, right? God is more concealed. When I'm looking at a step stool, I don't really see the back of the chair. I'm not necessarily realizing who's sitting on top of it, right? I'm only seeing the base. And this has to do with our experience in this world, right? Where we get to one of the strongest evidences, one of the strongest evidence data point for God's existence is his concealment, right? The fact that it's so clear that he's missing is sort of the indication that he's there. But of course, because it's more concealed, we look at it as the footstool. And with regards to the heavens, where it would his holiness is more revealed, so to speak, right? Or when I look at the Hubble telescope and I'm like in awe, that's where a place where there could be more of that majesty happening.
Right, and this is what the Rebbe brings here in the Magic Book, is that when he talks about the acquisitions, he talks about things that, what does he say here? The light is less obscured. Their movement from up to down, let's say in the world, is less obscured. So it's almost like things, like we said, like things that God acquired. So it's almost like the infinity within God is expressed or visible a little bit more in those acquisitions. So it's almost like when you buy a book, you open up the first page and you put CS, right? Or BS, whatever. So you put your initials. And that is your item, but the fact that you own it is a little bit more visible because you put your initials there.
Your name on it, right? Exactly.
Right, so you attached your identity to them. So those are things that are. That's kind of how he talks about that.
I like that, right? So those are elements because God, in theory, right? We say "Leitatar panui mine," right? There's no space void of you. Right. So even if I'm looking at this little rock, or I'm looking at the coronavirus, right? This too is God's glory, right? However, like you said, there's things that have his name on it, which are more clearly, his light is shining through them more clearly.
Right.
Okay. Moving on.
Yes. So,
okay. Avraham minayin. Dechtiv ויברכהו ויאמר ברוך אברהם לאל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ. And he, it's again Abraham, right?
Abraham, as it is written,
right,
in Genesis, and he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Avram to God Most High, acquirer of heavens and earth."
Right. Notice over here, this is before his name change, right? This is still Abram before Avraham, which has many deep interpretations and reasons why that name has changed, also for a later time. But there is a focus. Now we're meeting an individual, right? So we spoke about now we acquired the Torah, and we acquired the place where this is happening, right? The world where this is happening, the heavens and the earth. Now there has to be someone that needs to fulfill the purpose of the former two acquisitions, right? Yeah. And so Abraham is one of these acquisitions, as we just said, and he's the first to really spread God's belief in the world. I know historically there are other elements of that, understood, but Abraham is very unique in this way. And just to go on a little tangent over here, we read about Enosh, the time of Enosh.
Right.
And Az huchal likro b'shem Hashem. Right. That's when they started using God's name. So there's interpretations which this is when people started blessing and recognizing God's name. However, the Baharal looks at Az huchal from chilul, from desecration. And he says at this point, God's name began being desecrated, which is people realize that the we say God is Melech Mamchem Lachim, the king of all kings.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed for people at the time, focusing on the more kings was easier than focusing on the one king that's all encompassing. And,
Right.
and in many traditions, that really stayed in the more mystical or secret teachings of these things. So let's say when we look at Hinduism, we know about all the multiple gods, but ultimately it goes back to Brahman with a source. But that's for the priestly, that's for the Brahman people and their priestly class. That's not really being taught. And the layman is interacting with the other kings, the other intermediaries that the Torah talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense where if you want to have a conversation with God, you need to know who you are to be able to speak to God. Okay, so Moses knows who he is, and that's why the conversation with God is fruitful, because I know me, so I know you. When you're talking to me, this makes sense. Azucha likro b'shem Hashem was also more amorphic or more general, which is people started reaching out to God. The problem is they themselves weren't oriented at that point.
Right.
They themselves didn't know who they were, so that conversation is diluted. And just one last thing about that, that is also the difference between Balaam the prophet and Moses, which we say that if you look at the book of Leviticus, Vayikra in Hebrew, the last letter of the first word, Vayikra, and you called out, is with a small aleph, the first letter. And the reason the Midrash says it's small, because Vayikra means God, the way God and Moses spoke to each other was at this very high level of resolution. And Moses felt embarrassed by this. He didn't want to take all the credit, so he made the aleph smaller.
Mm-hmm.
With Bilam, which our sages tell us was as powerful as Moses, but for the rest of the nations, it says Vayikar, okay, which is one has to do with personal knowledge, one has to do with sort of passing knowledge. It wasn't necessarily directed purposely. It's more that Abraham. It's more like Moses is fully oriented, so he could see the matrix clearly, and that's why he could act like the one, so to speak, right? He could manipulate the source code and speak and do and save Trinity. Bilam is he happens to tap in to the matrix. So Vayikar is something that's not happening intentionally, more that he is aware of that code, and that code is everywhere, so he manages to see it.
Right. With so Moses, he's missing the aleph. He's ignorant of the aleph, and maybe can we say that the aleph is the source, right? He's missing the source. He doesn't.
I haven't thought about that by the way, but he's missing the source. That's great. So he's missing. Now, the reason he's so powerful is also because, like Abraham, he also comes from Aram. Aram is one of the groups that managed to maintain in it. It's like we just spoke about, Azu Chali Kro B'Shem Hashem. They managed to maintain this understanding of God. From Abraham, we had a recognition of proper orientation that continues on with Moses. For the rest of the world, Abraham is very Bilam is special because, like Moses, he is there to offer global prophecy. So for the collective, that's very powerful. If you don't want it to just be for the individual. However, again, it's weakened by the fact that it's not intentional.
Yeah.
Okay, but that was
interesting.
So that's by the way, that if you also realize earlier on we spoke about in Pirkei Avot, we actually speak about Abraham and we compare him to Bilam.
Yeah, right.
And that's because they're shared lineage,
right?
And they're shared interest here because that force is strong in both of them.
Bilam is one lucky fella in one way. He's been compared both to Moses and
Abraham. But that is in a certain sense always a conversation that's happening, that all the world could up its level, and the individuals all could be seen as holier than the high priest.
Yeah.
Right. So again, there's a difference between the collective and the individual, and we're always dealing with this tension with the foreigner coming inside in some way. Ultimately, Bilam prophesizes that, he wants to die a righteous death and he wants to be, with the people of Israel. So hopefully one day that could actually that could actually happen. And I really think that in the world today, slowly but surely, all of us are trying to distill and have more of that clear conversation, that better frequency, as we're trying to understand, God. Okay, so Abraham, like we just discussed, is very serious. Right, he rediscovers the sovereignty of God. Right.
Yeah.
And we said there's 4 people like this: Abraham, King Chizkiyahu, Messiah, and Job. These are all individuals that come to God on their own, right? They're not brought into it. Rather, they come to God by themselves.
Interesting. Somebody just told me about there's a interpretation, I guess you can say, that when it talks about how the Israelites can go into the land, it says that they can go into the land, and the word that it uses kind of you can connect it to Job, and the fact that Job, when he died, his spirit or his protection of the land, supposedly in this interpretation, he was like also the prophet of the nations. Once he died, his protection over them is gone away. So that meant it was the right time for the Israelites to actually enter the land.
Is this in relation to the spies, the Meraglim?
Yeah, that was in relation. We got there.
Let me write this down. I'm not aware of this.
There is a word that connects it, something with Eretz Utz, but I can.
Eretz Utz is the land of Oz, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, there's some word there that is connected. I'm gonna search for it. There's some word that connects Iyov, the Meraglim, and coming into the land.
I don't know if I spoke about this with you, and we won't get into it, but like Job, Jethro, and Bilam also represent and this relates a little to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
These were Torahs, these were operating systems that existed in the world that the world knew about.
Right.
And this goes all the way back to why when we have the story of Pharaoh trying to figure out what to do with the Israelites, or more about the fact that there was a prophecy that a redeemer will come for the Israelites, right? The 3 wise men who are giving him advice are Job, Jethro, and Bilam. And the idea is that those were the 3 Torahs. One represents between man and himself, man and his creator, man and the world. And the reason of the Torah of Moses is because it is the Torah that balances all 3 of them, basically. Yep. But again, this is giving a lot of credit to our boy Bilam. So hopefully he'll do well. Right. So we said that Abraham rediscovered the thing over there, and just on Abraham, obviously we call him Avraham Ivri, the Hebrew, and this is because the entire world was on one side of understanding. Right. He's leaving his father's idol shop, idols are us, and he was on the other side, holding, believing in God. And at the time, obviously, it's very dramatic that you're going to be the one person that's against everyone else. There are some hints of this in the concept of the Hindu, because it's the Hindu River and it's on the other side of the river, and that, like, again, that whole cross pollination that's happening with the East.
Yeah.
Anything in the magic book about our boy Abraham, or no?
It says. No, I think we touched about this, about like he says like the pre-Sinai world, like testifying that he was able to, like, always devoted his life to bring awareness to the pre-Sinai, to bringing awareness of God to the pre-Sinai world. But
yeah, so that is. So I spoke about this once with the Noahides about there's the Abraham path and there's the Moses path.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Abraham path for the individual. And when we say what Abraham, there's a term, it's called a nefesh asher asa b'Haran, all the souls that he created in Haran. And the sages tell us that him and his wife were on a theological mission at the time. And they were teaching a version of their Torah to the people in their neighborhood. There's obviously the school, the philosophical school of Shem ve'ever, right, where we have one of Noah's sons is still there, potentially still teaching. And so we are aware that this philosophical and theological knowledge is still out there that Abraham is playing with. And then we have the double lech lecha. Right. Moses leaves once, and then Abraham leaves once, and then leaves again. So once is for the once he leaves, and then he realizes that God wants this universal mission of like just teaching a few people. It needs to be focused within a people, and then from that people, it will spread on. So Abraham goes and comes back, and that's because there's a whole relationship and thing he's cultivating at that time, right? So I agree with your book. Yisrael, right? We're next one. Yisrael minayin. Dichtiv ad yavor amcha Hashem ad yavor amzu kanita. The Omer in Tehillim, in Proverbs, in Psalms, lekdoshim asher be'eretz hema ve'adirei kol chefzi bam.
Israel, as it is written, Exodus, till your nation, O God, shall pass, till this nation you have acquired shall pass. And it says in Psalms, to the holy who are upon the earth, the noble ones, in whom is all my delight.
Right. So I'm sure you guys all heard this before, but the people of Israel, right, were created and for the purpose that God is declaring on Mount Sinai, right, as he tells them that you're going to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That's what God is expecting from us, right? So this, again, when being chosen, that doesn't mean better. It just means there's a sense of responsibility that we have. And anyone that wants to take on that responsibility is also chosen, right? So if I'm part of a group that's going to make sure all the garbage is clean in Jerusalem. It's not exclusive. If you want to also clean the garbage in Jerusalem, you are now part of this group. But until you join that group, I'm the group that's doing that because I'm the group that's doing that right now. So we are God's people, and we carry the responsibility of bearing God's name, right? And the question is like, how are we doing this, right? So it's of course by observing the Torah and fulfilling the commandments. This is how we're doing this, and God really sees us as one of his hidden treasures, as the Torah talks about, right? Which is he built this whole world, and he has his children, which he considers like, his special acquisition or his prototype, or I don't know if prototype's the right word, but where he wants to try to manifest this. But again, it's supposed to be a roadmap for everyone else. So in OpenAI language, this code that the Israelites are playing out, which we are still playing this out, ideally, should it prove successful, which as believers we believe it will, everyone then is asked to adopt that code because it's a successful code. The flip side is also offered to the Israelites. When you come to the land and you look at the nations around you and you see they have a king, you could give yourself a king, because God is letting them know, hey, guess what? The world in its wisdom managed to figure out some good systems. Yeah. And as long as they work and they're not corrupt, partake in them. And I believe the interpretation of king doesn't mean monarchy. It means system, democracy, monarchy, whatever it needs, you need to figure out that works at that time when you're in the land. And again, but we're not in a vacuum. There are the other nations out there. Even if we are the chosen nation, that is among other nations, right? So we are not walking alone in this place. There are other people and other things and other narratives and other stories that are being played out.
Right. There is chokhmah that we can. Right.
Exactly. So the wisdom in the Gentiles or in the nation of the world, you should believe that it's something that is worth acquiring and understanding, right? And right. So really, also when God, obviously, the famous story of the Exodus, right? When he frees us and he tells us that you're going to come worship me in the mountain. This is all part of the deal. Well, interestingly enough, if you look at the text, the Israelites were aware of a prophecy that will be released one day. That's also part of the code sequence that Joseph uses, right? He says, he tells the descendants, when I die, one day, God will come back and claim you.
Right. And God tells Moses, tell them,
they will know that you're the real deal when you say the magic word. Now, this is in the context of a midrash, how what the Israelites would do on their downtime is they would play they would reminisce on their old stories by the fireplace, basically.
Mhm.
That's what they would do to sort of lighten the mood. These lost stories connect to a different midrash that says that, the Levites are already coming down with some scrolls of these ideas, right? So you could imagine the Israelites sitting down talking about Jacob and Abraham and talking about the good old days, and one day we'll be back. So then you hear Moses come say, Then they leave then he takes them to the mountain. There's never a discussion about the commandments, by the way. And that's why also when he tells them this, like they respond to Moses,
right?
Kol asher yomar naaseh. Right. Anything God tells us to do, we'll do, which is basically like, we believe that you're the guy to take us out of Egypt because that happened. We saw that. This whole Torah thing and commandment stuff, it's not good enough for us to hear that from you. Your word was good enough because you used a sequence of a promise to get us out of here into a land. This whole conversation about Torah, that is like an add-on in a certain sense. I mean, we are being it could have almost been that the Israelites had a choice. If they acted in a certain way, maybe they would have been fully redeemed, right? And they didn't need this whole story. Obviously, that negates the idea we have, or that contradicts the idea we have of the Torah is a blueprint and God is creating the whole world. But you could even say that the Torah being a blueprint, it allows it to manifest in different ways. Because of what happened, it needs to manifest the way it did right now, which ultimately leads us to 2024, you and I studying this scripture on the computer, right? But it could have played out in a different way, right? So this is, again, so the people of Israel, he gives them the Torah, he took them out of people. Ultimately, it's also, we should realize that it's giving of the Torah and acceptance of the Torah is really continued throughout the 40 years, right? Towards the end in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy, it says, in this day you become a people. Right? But now this is already towards the end, and this is after most of these people that were there in Sinai already passed away. Right. So there's a sense where he's saying not only when you left Egypt, but rather this is still ongoing. There's the famous Talmud that lets us know that only in the days of Mordecai and Esther do they actually accept the Torah willingly, right? Because during Sinai, there was this sense of like fear, awe, we have to do this. Only then when God was nowhere to be seen, yet they were redeemed, did they actually realize, okay, no, God is over here, and we are now taking on this mantle on ourselves. And that would be more than the 40 years. Really, the Torah is something that is constantly, the Torah is really the purpose of our existence as the Israelites. And from this fact, really, this is like where the special connection with God stems from, right? Which makes us the acquisition. The idea that acquisition 1 is the Torah, and then acquisition 3 is the people, are the people that could actually manifest and actualize this Torah as well, right? So this is part of this acquisition.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Sure.
This is a whole rabbit hole, but so we don't have to go into it. But I mean, like this whole talk about like the accepting the Torah and the let's call it the 2 stages, right? The stage where the Israelites just say, they don't hear about the command. They're just like, we'll do it, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that it's thrust upon them, right? Like a gigit, where like it's more about fear. And then eventually in Mordecai and Esther, it's more of an active or intellectual or rational decision. I feel like that's that theme keeps coming up also in Hasidus, or like in different ways. So but it also is a reflection of reality, of how things work. Even as if you think of humans as children first, and then growing up, right? As a child, you take upon yourself things and you don't even know, right? Your parents tell you what to do, and you're like, oh, okay, right? You don't really understand. And then when you grow up, you need to go through that process again. But this time, you need to have a rational understanding of what it means, right? And I know that Brit Milah, like circumcision, in the Jewish sense, is very much like that, right? You do it before you even understand why you need to do it,
right?
Baby. So that keeps coming up. I feel like it's a beautiful representation of how reality actually works and what you have to do in order to actually act in the world. First, you need to take something and embody it, and then you actually are able to understand it. I guess the only other example that I'll give here that is just a little bit different is when you learn, for example, a martial art, like let's say wrestling, like jujitsu. Sometimes you just need to roll with people. You need to like experience it, and then once you actually experience it, you can actually understand more the technical things because you already embodied some of it. You've been in different positions, so and that also how that works as well.
I mean, this is contrary to, like, when a kid falls down today or a kid having the tantrum, like the culture today tells us, like, oh, how are you feeling? Validate your feel. Like, there's a sense where, like, no, like, you need to be told in a certain sense what the reality is for you then later to realize how to interact with it properly. So, like, there's a sense where it needs to be thrusted upon you as long as there's wiggle room and space for you to take it on yourself. So I can't remember exactly which prophet says this. I think it's Isaiah, but it talks about how if earlier God pulled us by the hand, now it's going to come from our heart. Where the sense was the pulling by the hand is God had to like sort of pull us, right? This is part of us being a stiff-necked people.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not easily convinced. We don't want to hear. So there's this pulling along. However, at the end of days, it's a willingness from us to want to participate and want to do this, and it's coming out from us. And this is it goes back to Shuvah Elai Shuvah Lechem, right? Return to me and I'll return to you.
Yeah.
At some point, Jacob will agree. This is Jacob's channel. Zionism's a bad idea. I believe that 1948 is, in a certain sense, God saying, like, that's my move, right? Like, what's your move? Arguably, Jacob could say, like, well, the Zionist state was the wrong move. Sure, fine. God is still waiting for our response. And that's part of that dialogue, and it requires from us to ante up, right? We can't just, like, when you have something like 1948, then, like, to then be like, no, I wanted the miracle to be like more exact, and you're like, well, that doesn't happen that way. Like this is what the miracle looks like. So, right, but that's for a different day. Okay, Beit HaMikdash, the temple, correct?
Yes, and by the way, just to let you know, I have a hard stop in 7 minutes, or 7.
Okay, Beit HaMikdash. Well, just be a good Jew. No, Beit HaMikdash, Minayin. So I guess we'll finish next week. Then we'll do 11.
Yeah, 11 is small, so we can do 11 and then kind of just like talk about next step. Yeah.
Okay, Beit HaMikdash Minayin Dechtiv Machon Shivtecha Pa'alta Hashem Mikedash Hashem Konenu Yadecha Omer Ve'Yaviam El Gvul Kodsho Har Ze Kanta Yameinu.
Okay, so the holy temple, as it is written.
Yamino. Sorry.
What? Sorry.
Yamino.
Yeah. Oh,
Yamino.
Yeah. The holy temple, as it is written in Exodus, the base for your dwelling that you, God, have achieved, the sanctuary, O Lord, that your hands have established. And it says in Psalms, and he brought them to his holy domain. This mount is his right hand has acquired.
Right. So the temple is magical, even though we said, you're right, God can't be contained, and the temple is an 8th-day creation in a 7th-day world, and it keeps getting destroyed and all that good stuff. Having said that, God does still locate and sanctify a place, right? Because of the human need for connection, because of us trying to have him in this, try to have a connection with him, which is somewhat physical, right? We have a temple. However, a Beit Mikdash, right, eventually also turns its name into a Beit Tefillah, a house of prayer.
Yeah.
And these are also verses that have to do, which allude to our relationship with also the Gentiles of the world, right? We say, of course, in Micah, right, from out of Zion shall go forth the Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem. So this is happening obviously here. Ultimately, we say that V'naharu amim rabim, right? So many nations will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of God. And what's interesting over there that he will teach us from his ways, and we shall walk in his path, in Rabim, in plural. And this is in a certain way also to let the world know that the temple serves not only as the point of orientation and unity, but also the place where multiplicity can get expressed, because there's an interpretation, which is his multiple ways and multiple paths are there to show that there are many paths and many languages. While they all have to be oriented properly through the temple, the Christian, the Buddhist, the Jew have their own unique path and their own unique way, right? So there's place for all those paths. All roads lead to the temple, but it's okay for us to be on separate roads, just like it was okay for the 12 tribes to have their own path, as the Midrash says, when they walk through the Sea of Reeds, right? So, but we could ask, as we're wrapping this up, is the order important, right, of the things we're talking about over here, right? Is the Mishnah, the way they're giving to us, are these just general 5 acquisitions, or is there a sequence to them, right? And it would seem that these acquisitions are really all made to help the people of Israel achieve the purpose of studying of the Torah. And the reason is so Israel should observe it. So that is really, and if they observe it, God could be in this place. So it really continues in a certain order, but it's all there for us to be able to manifest it properly in this world, and then create a vessel for God to be with us as well. So it ends at the temple, but ultimately, with proper orientation, we ourselves are supposed to be like each acquisition of these things brings the divine presence, brings God closer to being revealed in his creation, ultimately in us. Right? So even at the temple, ultimately, it's in the internal temple that we build for ourselves and the way we act, right? So we want to be manifesting a temple in our everyday lives, and that is something that we want people to be able to see, people to come to, people where people could extract wisdom from. And in that sense, we are all a symbolic Jerusalem in that sense. We're assuming we are embodying that idea that goes all the way back to God's requirement from us.
Right, and since we're on Jacob's channel, and Jacob is semi-officially related to Chabad,
right?
We can also say that, like, the Chabad's, like, their motto really is that our duty here is to create a dwelling place for God in this world, and that means in the world, but it also means because, like, it says that God will dwell inside of the temple, and it uses plural, in them, right? It means that within us we are a temple, and that is where we create a space for God in ourselves, within our actions, our thoughts, our speech. So, and that message dovetails very well with other messages in the TLC, all the way back to JP.
100%. Right. That's a very good verse. Right? Just again to stress, build me a temple and I will dwell amongst them. Temple in singular, dwelling amongst them in plural.
Yeah.
And we are all the temple. You got a